Mr. Etheridge, thank you very much for coming today to participate in these interviews that we're conducting to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Housing Court. If you'd like to just give us a little bit of an outline of your experience in the Housing Court and during what period of time you were involved there.
In the early 1980s, I came into civil court. And at the time I started civil court, I think me and Ernie Belzegott pretty much started the same exact time. And so what happened was I was assigned to the housing court. It was like the information desk. And so I worked there in New York County for about, I think it seemed like about 3-4 years before I went to Queens. And then that's when I had the opportunity I was chosen to go to a meeting that was held in the boardroom on the 12th floor, 111 Center Street. At that meeting, there was 3 civil court people there. Jerry Dewar, who was the Deputy Borough Chief for the Bronx, Miles McKenna, who was a clerk out in the civil court in Kings County, and myself. We did not have any idea what the meeting was about, and so we came to the meeting, and the meeting had about, it seemed like about 80 people at that meeting. It had a very, very big audience. Judge Israel Rubin was administrative judge at that time, so he was the one who constructed that meeting. So at the time, we kind of came in, we were just part of the audience, but it was made up of housing court judges, HPD, OCA, IBM people, and court people like myself. So that was how I kind of segued into the opportunity of working on the housing court computer information system. Right.
Now, what is the Housing Court information system?
What happened, housing court was extremely busy. It was almost like an emergency room. And there was so much information coming in. And we almost worked in partnership with HPD, because every time someone got a non-payment of rent, their answer was violations. But what made housing court so complex, it was the fact that you had 2 agencies working very close together, and we didn't share information. So we didn't talk to each other because the volume was so high, the information was hard to get to. So Judge Israel Rubin, along with OCA, HPD, and I think they even actually went out and got IBM involved and talked about putting together, at that time, was like one of the first automated systems. So we kind of came together, attacked it kind of a team way, where we came in with the various different players. And what happened, to my knowledge, which was very surprising, I thought I was going to be a bit player in this, and we became major players in this.
What did you do to implement this program, or how did it change the way things were done in housing court?
Well, first of all, the creation of it was very, very creative. OCA had volunteered one of their top analyst people to come and give us structure in terms of creating a system. OCA went out and hired a fellow by the name of Robert Johnson for the purposes to be the analyst, and then there was a personal programmer assigned to it. So at that time, that was extremely sophisticated, to have the outside people like IBM, Bob Johnson, who came from another sector of society, hired exclusively for that purpose. We had a woman named Linda Raycott, was that a programmer that was assigned to it. So before we even got to creating the system, the process was very, very interesting. So we would meet daily. We would talk about the paper flow, the flow of information. It was a dual host system. What a dual host system is when 2 agencies are using one computer. So we had to find out what HPD did, and we had to incorporate them so you can actually go on the housing court system, push a button, and now you're in the HPD system. So what happened was it took a system where information was very, very hard to get to. I remember in the clerk's office, we would have boxes and boxes of unfiled paper, and that was a tedious task, just filing them. So people would come to the counter with their petition, and then we would look up, and we were trying to move the people, and it was so hard to get to the information. So what this computer system did, it gave us quick access, easy access, and it was made because of the fact that Jerry Dewar, myself, and Miles McKenna was on it, and we were chosen to be like the major architects of this thing. What happened was we made it a tool for the clerks in housing court. We made it the #1 priority, which we made it where we answered petitions, we created calendars, ordered to show courts. Everything that was done by paper in housing court, we automated it. And it changed the life of housing court, I would think, drastically.
you still working with the housing court when they put in the initiative which changed the way cases were assigned?
Okay.
That was in 1997?
No. I became Chief Clerk of New York City Criminal Court in 1994.
Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to add concerning your experience in the housing court?
Oh, I think in terms of the housing court, in terms of the automation system, and I think that's the reason I'm here today, is that the input, we had data entry people that would help create the screens that are used for data entry people. We went into the courtrooms and we met with the people who worked in the courtrooms, and we created calendar markings that came from them. Everything became, nothing was made and was just kind of brought to the people and said, use it. They had input on every part of the developing of that. Jerry Dewitt was very good because he developed the screens. And what was so interesting about the screens, something as simple as the part of the court that got the most volume, he made that easier access. So if you had to go, like, say, to hit 3 different screens, he made it based on the volume. And then we went paperless. Long before people started talking about going paperless, that was the housing court was one of the first. But the order show cores became right from the computer. You know, we looked up everything.
Well, the court, I think the housing court, they print the actual order to show cause.
Yes.
We're not paperless yet.
Well, I mean to the point where they were printing out
you
everything.
weren't bringing in everybody else's
Right,
forms
right,
to try
right,
to do
right,
this.
right.
The court was controlling the paperwork and bringing
Right.
their form in
That's right.
to process in order to show cause or.
Exactly. We was hitting print buttons, and print buttons was creating. I remember the first time we created. Yeah, I remember the calendars. The first time we created a calendar, because the first site that we developed this in was in Queens.
Mm-hmm.
The woman whose job was typing up the calendar, the first time we switched, I mean, broke down and cried. I mean, she got hysterical, and I had to go to a meeting with the borough chief clerk at that time, which was Bernie Daly, and she's trying to express how I think she saw this as taking her job away.
Right.
And really what it did was
to eliminating the stress of preparing all those
calendars. It created a cleaner calendar, and we had pages and pages of calendars. I mean, our calendars were very, very thick, and they had to be in order, so it wasn't like you just went alphabetical. It was based on the process and request that someone was asking for. So it became, I mean, it was probably, I think, because as I went to the criminal court and had an opportunity to work on other programs, I thought that was one of the more sophisticated, you know.
The one in housing court.
You know, the housing court. I'm sure, you know, they improved on it and built on, but I'm thinking like in terms of what it did as a tool, it surpassed what we had in criminal court. And I think family court, when they created a computer system, was built with the same ideology of what we did. We wanted it to be a system that you can go to, put a name in, and you can get all the information. I remember when landlords would come into the courts, because you know we had the way the housing court was set up. You had landlords that owned a lot of property, so to be able to go in and push a button and see the property and the violations, that empowered the judge greatly and put the landlord at a situation where all of a sudden the negotiations was different.
Yeah.
So it was a phenomenal tool. I remember when Linda Raycott was the programmer. When Linda Raycott was the programmer, OCA wanted us to create a more simple history. And so when Diane Thompson came in, who took over, would say to me, who obviously I wasn't a tech person per se, I was just kind of like a manager, would say, Bill, stand pat and fight for what it is that you want, because once they create something, they're going to have to live with it. So we created histories, and I mean, we wanted the histories in certain orders. So like, in other words, when you bring somebody history, if you want the last thing that's done and you wanted to go all the way down. And so it was this kind of teamsmanship and this goal. And Israel Judge Rubin, who I feel like I became very, very close friends with, I mean, he said, he asked me to be able to manage. That's how I became management analyst of the computer system. He said, Bill, I want this to be my baby. I want this to be part of my legacy. So we went at it with a gusto. I mean, it was really, really a very, very big deal. And we didn't want to step on anybody's toes. So the guy working the counter in a clerk's room, the woman who is sorting out the calendar, people who worked in the order show courts, even the people that was doing appeals. We wanted input from everybody where everybody felt that this made their life and job better.
And I think you succeeded.
Well, I tell you, I'm proud of it. I mean, and you know what? I didn't realize the magnitude of it until I left and I worked in other courts. And I saw that there was nothing that came close to it. And I felt like, you know, it was a big project. IBM, I mean, even though IBM wanted the job actually creating it, and that did not happen. But for them to structurally kind of mentor and coach us in terms of what we envisioned and what we wanted to see, Jerry Dewar was phenomenal. I mean, he really had the ability to make it very, very efficient. And Miles McKenna, who was a civil court person, I mean, I had worked in a number of different courts. I think I started in family. I went to special narcotics. I've been to a lot of different courts before I came here. But Miles, because he worked totally in civil court, he had a hand on civil court that was able to kind of allow us to serve it better. I think Jerry Dewar came from another court. I was coming from different courts, and to have someone with that kind of personal relationship just kind of added to it. Everything was cumbersome. Everything was very, very cumbersome. And HPD was still kind of, you know, HPD, the reason it was set up to kind of protect the properties in the city of New York. But what happened was the people who owned the properties, what they did was they turned it around and they made it like we were collection agencies. So we were, you know, non-payment was like 85-90% of our business. So what happened was the system favored. Even HPD, who was built with housing preservation being its goal, found itself in a position where it was being somewhat manipulated. So what happened was, as we had to go and get this information out, the information was not intimidating to landlords. It was so cumbersome. It got to the point, to be honest with you, I really felt that it was something that judges didn't want to read. Court attorneys were relatively new to the court back then. And even the court personnel, it wasn't like it told us what we wanted it to tell us. And I think that, if I'm correct, is that we pressured even HPD to become more user-friendly, because it wasn't user-friendly. It came too cumbersome. I mean, if you had 20 pages of a building and, you know, we got people lined up out the door and the court is being pressured to get through the day, no one read it. So it became this, you know, paper that we were more bluffing. But then, based on our system, and then working with HPD, because we actually became partners, we actually was able to get to the information that the judge needed. In other words, say for instance you came in on a non-payment answer with violations, the court was restricted that they can only respond to the violations that you're putting into your answer. But HPD, you would pull out all the violations in the whole building. So it'd be like, so you're looking up, and you know that in terms of your particular case, that wasn't viable information for the court, and so the judge kind of went through it and whatnot, and it made it something that wasn't useful. But then we started to target it. We started to create printouts, HPD inspection printouts that was part of the case. So it wasn't like, you know, we had to go separately and get this mass amount of paper that's speaking to violations that obviously wasn't part of someone's claim. Right.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Thanks for coming down.
Yeah, and I think in closing, I think that the people, you know, I don't remember all of their names. The Ray Turners, I think he was working here at the time. They got very excited about something being new, and because everybody got so excited about it, they was going beyond the call of duty, and they were working to perfect the system. Because what OCA was doing, we were going live, and we were going live with a system. We had like a whole lot of errors in it because we had pressure to kind of put it out there early, but it was the people who worked here that was identifying the errors. God bless you. That was identifying the errors. And even though I was going around the city, I started in Queens, and I think we went to New York, and then went to the Bronx, and but the input from the workers in each county, I thought led to the success, and they did it enthusiastically. I mean, they really took a lot of pride in this.
I'm sure they realized how it would make their job so much easier.
Yes.
Once this could all be centralized in this information system that they could get easily access to by going on a computer as opposed to searching through tons of files and trying to find a file and not know what the history was without having it all there on a computer to look at in seconds.
Without a doubt. And I think that
I know judges today rely heavily on it. You know, when we're getting an application for an order to show cause, and the file's missing because maybe this is the second application in the same day or whatever, you can look at the history that's printed out with the order to show cause, and you'll know this case has been kicking around for 8 months, and the tenant hasn't shown up 5 times, or whatever the case may be. But the history is right there, printed in front of you, which takes very little time.
And if anyone asks the success of it, CRIMS has a system, has a computer system too, but the system was developed outside of the court community. And so if you was to look at the CRIMS system opposed to the housing court system, you see the big difference. The difference was that it was tailor fit for the housing court working community, where the CRIMS system was a collection of information, and when we wanted to get special information, they had to write special programs to tailor make it and tell us what was going on. But I think that the spirit, the overall energy of the people, I think Ernie at the time was working in the cashier. Everybody was sharing and getting in, and it made what I did really so much easier, because it wasn't like I was in there really directing. I was asking people, does this work for you? Is it cumbersome? What do we need to do to make it better? And everybody was contributing. I'm talking about the borough chief clerks, the housing court person was in charge of the back office, the workers at the counter, the workers doing the data entry. So with that collaborative effort, they created, I thought, back then, and I still think, the only thing I heard that even kind of challenged, I think the family court system recently came up with a system that they took some pride in, but I think that it was kind of secondary to how the housing court pioneered something.